The day started like any other, quiet, predictable, and achingly hollow. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee that tasted more like regret than caffeine, staring out the window at the muted gray of the morning. My career was thriving, my home was immaculate, and yet there was a void that no amount of success or tidiness could fill. I told myself it was the quiet I craved, but deep down, I knew it was something else. Something I wasn't ready to name. Then came the knock. It was soft, hesitant, as if the person on the other side wasn't sure they wanted to be heard. I opened the door to find Rachel standing there, her usual air of confidence replaced by something fragile, almost shattered. Her eyes darted to mine, then away, as if the weight of her gaze might break her. In her hands, she clutched a plain manila envelope, her fingers trembling ever so slightly. "Hi," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need your help." I stepped aside, gesturing for her to come in. She hesitated, as though crossing the threshold might mean admitting something she wasn't ready to face. But then she stepped inside, the envelope pressed tightly against her chest like a shield. I closed the door behind her, the soft click echoing in the silence. We sat on the couch, the space between us feeling both too close and impossibly far. She didn't speak at first, just stared at the envelope in her hands, as if it held the answers, or maybe the questions, she'd been too afraid to ask. "Rachel," I said gently, "what's going on?" She took a deep breath, her shoulders rising and falling with the effort. "I need to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone." Her voice cracked, and for a moment, I thought she might break down right there. But she held herself together, barely. "Go on," I urged, my own heart pounding in my chest. "Whatever it is, it's okay." She shook her head, her eyes welling with tears. "No, it's not okay. It's everything I've been running from. Everything I've tried to forget." She handed me the envelope, her hand trembling as she let it go. "Please, just read it." I took it, the weight of it heavier than I expected. Inside were letters, photographs, and a journal, evidence of a life I never knew Rachel had lived. As I began to read, the pieces fell into place. A past relationship, one that had started with hope and ended in devastation. A man who had promised her the world, only to take everything from her, her trust, her sense of self, her ability to love. I looked up at her, my eyes wide with shock. "Rachel, I had no idea." She laughed bitterly, the sound hollow and broken. "No one did. I made sure of that. I buried it so deep, I thought I'd never have to face it. But it's always been there, haunting me. And now I can't run anymore." I reached out, placing a hand on hers. Her skin was cold, her fingers stiff with tension. "You're not alone in this," I said, my voice firm despite the turmoil churning within me. "Whatever you need, I'm here." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the depth of her pain, a pain that mirrored something in my own heart. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know what I'd do without you." We sat in silence for a long time, the weight of her confession pressing down on us both. But in that silence, something shifted. A bond, unspoken but undeniable, began to form between us. A bond built on vulnerability, on the courage to face the things we'd rather keep hidden. Rachel took a shuddering breath, her hands still trembling. "I don't know where to start," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've spent so long pretending it didn't happen, pretending I was okay. But I'm not. I'm not okay." I squeezed her hand, a silent promise that she wouldn't have to face this alone. "We'll figure it out together," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "One step at a time." The room felt heavy with unspoken truths, the air thick with the weight of Rachel's confession. I hadn't expected this, any of it, and yet here we were, two women on the edge of something neither of us fully understood. Rachel's hand still trembled as she clutched the edges of the manila envelope, her knuckles white with tension. I could see the struggle in her eyes, the way she wrestled with herself, torn between the safety of silence and the terrifying freedom of honesty. We sat on the couch, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. I wanted to say something, anything, to ease the tension, but words felt inadequate. Instead, I reached for her hand, my fingers brushing against hers. She flinched at first, as if the contact startled her, but then she relaxed, her grip tightening around mine. "Start at the beginning," I said softly, my voice breaking the stillness. "Tell me everything." Rachel hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. "It's not that simple," she murmured, her voice trembling. "How do you even begin to explain something like this?" I squeezed her hand gently, a silent encouragement. "You don't have to explain it all at once. Just start with him." "Who was he?" Rachel's breath hitched, and for a moment, I thought she might retreat back into herself. But then she nodded, a small, almost imperceptible gesture, and began to speak. "His name was Lucas," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was everything I thought I wanted. Charming, confident, and he loved the way I loved him. At first, it was like a dream. I thought I'd finally found someone who truly understood me." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of what was left unsaid. I could see the pain in her eyes, the way her body seemed to shrink in on itself as she spoke. "But it wasn't real, was it?" I asked gently, already knowing the answer. Rachel shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "No," she whispered. "It wasn't real. He wasn't who I thought he was. It started small, little things that I didn't notice at first. He'd criticize the way I dressed, the way I talked, the people I hung out with. At first, I thought he was just looking out for me, trying to help me be the best version of myself. But then it got worse. He'd get angry if I didn't do exactly what he wanted, if I didn't meet his expectations. And the worst part was, I started to believe him. I started to think that maybe he was right, that maybe I was the problem." Her voice broke, and she buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I felt a surge of anger, not at her, but at this man, Lucas, who had taken someone so vibrant and reduced her to this. I reached out, pulling her into a hug, and she clung to me like a lifeline. "You're not the problem," I said firmly, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. "You never were. He was the one who was wrong, Rachel. Not you." She shook her head, her tears soaking into my shoulder. "I should have seen it," she whispered, her voice thick with regret. "I should have known better." "You couldn't have known," I replied, my voice softening. I hesitated, searching for the right words. "He manipulated you, Rachel. He made you doubt yourself, made you feel like you were the one who was wrong. But you weren't. You're not." Rachel pulled back slightly, her eyes red and swollen from crying. I don't know how to move past this," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I've spent so long trying to bury it, trying to forget it ever happened. But I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see his face. I hear his voice. And I feel so stupid." "You're not stupid," I said firmly, my tone leaving no room for argument. "You're human, Rachel. And he took advantage of that. But that doesn't define you. You're so much more than what he did to you." She looked at me then, her eyes searching mine, as if she were trying to find the truth in my words. "Do you really believe that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I do," I said without hesitation. "And I'll keep saying it until you believe it too." Rachel's lips trembled, and for a moment, I thought she might cry again. But then she took a deep, shuddering breath and nodded. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you for this." "You don't have to," I replied, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "We'll get through this together, Rachel. One step at a time." She nodded, her shoulders relaxing slightly, and for the first time since she'd knocked on my door, I saw a glimmer of something in her eyes, something that looked a lot like hope. That night, Rachel stayed late, and we talked more than we had in years. We talked about Lucas, about the things he'd done and the scars he'd left behind. But we also talked about other things that had nothing to do with him. We laughed, shared stories, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a connection that went beyond the surface. As the hours passed, I realized something. This wasn't just about Rachel. It was about me too. Listening to her, supporting her, forced me to confront the things I'd been burying in my own life. The lies I'd been telling myself, the ways I'd been hiding from my own truth. By the time Rachel finally left, the first light of dawn was creeping through the windows. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and exhaustion. "Thank you," she said again, her voice soft but sincere. "For everything." I smiled, giving her hand one last squeeze. "Anytime," I replied. "But Rachel, don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning." She nodded, a small, tentative smile tugging at her lips. "I know," she said, "but it feels different this time. Like maybe, just maybe, I can actually do this." "You can," I said firmly. "And I'll be here every step of the way. As I watched her walk down the driveway, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness for what she'd been through, hope for what was to come, and something else, something that felt a lot like purpose. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of anticipation. The conversation with Rachel had lingered in my mind all night, swirling in my dreams and resurfacing the moment my eyes opened. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was about more than just her. It was about me, too. About the parts of my life I'd neatly tucked away, the truths I'd refused to face. I was halfway through my coffee when the doorbell rang. I hesitated, knowing it was Rachel before I even opened the door. There she stood, her face pale but determined, clutching a small notebook in her hands. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment we just stood there, the weight of everything unspoken hanging between us. "I couldn't sleep," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I kept thinking about Lucas, about everything he took from me. And I realized something. I need to write it down. I need to say it out loud to someone who'll listen. I stepped aside, motioning for her to come in. "I'm here," I said simply. She followed me to the living room, her steps slow and deliberate, as if she were carrying something heavy. She sat on the edge of the couch, her hands trembling as she opened the notebook. I took a seat across from her, giving her space, but letting her know I was fully present. "I've never told anyone this," she began, her voice shaky but resolute. "Not all of it, anyway. Not the parts that still haunt me." She took a deep breath, and then the words started pouring out. She told me about the early days with Lucas, how he'd swept her off her feet with his charm, his disarming smile, his promises of a future that felt too good to be true. She described how he'd made her feel like she was the center of his world, only to slowly chip away at her confidence, her independence, her sense of self. He'd say things, little things, at first, she said, her voice trembling, about how I wasn't dressing right, or how I was too shy, too quiet. Then it got worse. He'd accuse me of flirting with other men, of not loving him enough. And I believed him. I believed I was the problem. Her hands gripped the notebook tightly, her knuckles turning white. He'd apologize, of course. He'd say he was just passionate, that he loved me so much it made him crazy. And I'd forgive him every time, because I wanted to believe he could change. I wanted to believe I could fix him. I felt a lump in my throat as I listened, my heart breaking for her. "Rachel, you know it wasn't your fault, right? None of it was your fault." She nodded, but there were tears in her eyes. "I know that now, but back then, I didn't. I thought I was broken. I thought I wasn't good enough." She paused, flipping through the pages of the notebook. "There's one thing I've never told anyone," she said, her voice barely audible. "The night I left him, he followed me. He begged me to come back, said he'd change, said he couldn't live without me. And I almost did. I almost went back." She looked up at me, her eyes searching mine for understanding. "But I didn't. I walked away. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done." I reached out, placing a hand on hers. "You're stronger than you think, Rachel. Walking away, that takes courage. More courage than most people have." She gave me a small, tearful smile. "Thank you for listening, for not judging me." "Never," I said firmly. "You're not alone in this, Rachel. Not anymore." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of her words settling between us. I could feel the heaviness in the air, but there was also something else, something fragile but hopeful, like a seed trying to break through the soil. Eventually, Rachel closed the notebook and set it on the coffee table. I think I'm ready to let go of him. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. And I think writing it down, saying it out loud, that's the first step." "It is," I agreed. "And I'm proud of you. For facing this, for not letting it define you." She smiled, a real smile this time, and for a moment, I could see the woman she was before Lucas, the woman she was becoming again. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." As she stood to leave, I felt a surge of emotion, pride, hope, and something deeper, something I couldn't quite put into words. I walked her to the door, and as she stepped outside, she turned to me. "You've been so kind to me," she said. "But I can't help feeling like you're holding something back, too. Like there's something you're not saying." I froze, her words hitting me like a punch to the gut. She was right, of course. There was something I wasn't saying. Something I'd buried so deep I'd almost convinced myself it didn't exist. Maybe I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. But I'm not ready to face it. Not yet. She nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. When you are, I'll be here, just like you've been here for me. I watched her walk down the driveway, her steps lighter than they'd been when she arrived. And as I closed the door, I felt a strange mix of emotions, gratitude, fear, and a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. I turned back to the living room, my eyes landing on the notebook she'd left behind. I picked it up, flipping through the pages. Her words were raw, unfiltered, and painful to read. But there was also a kind of beauty in them, a beauty that came from facing the truth, no matter how hard it was. I sat down on the couch, the notebook in my lap. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to think about my own secrets, about the things I'd buried so deep I'd almost forgotten they were there. I didn't write them down, not yet, but I held the notebook in my hands, feeling the weight of it. And I knew, somewhere deep inside, that this was my first step. Dude, I woke up with the notebook still on my lap, the weight of it pressing against my legs. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows across the room. My mind felt heavy, like a storm had passed through it, leaving behind a mess I wasn't sure how to clean up. I picked up the notebook, running my fingers over the worn cover. Rachel's words were still fresh in my mind, her pain echoing in my chest like a ghost I couldn't shake. I stood up, stretching my stiff muscles, and moved to the kitchen to make coffee. The routine felt automatic, the familiar hum of the coffee maker grounding me as I tried to sort through the jumble of emotions. What did I even feel? Fear, certainly. Hope, maybe. But there was something else, too, something that gnawed at the edges of my thoughts, demanding to be acknowledged. The knock at the door came just as I poured my first cup. I froze, the sound jarring in the quiet of the morning. Rachel? It had to be. She was the only one who'd come by this early. I set the cup down and walked to the door, my heart inexplicably racing. But it wasn't Rachel. Standing on my porch was a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, with piercing blue eyes and a smile that felt too practiced to be genuine. His presence was disarming, but something about him set my nerves on edge. "Hi," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "I'm Lucas." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Lucas. Rachel's Lucas. My hand tightened on the doorknob as I stared at him, my mind scrambling to make sense of why he was here. Did Rachel tell him where I lived? Did he follow her? Panic clawed at my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He tilted his head, his smile never wavering. "I was hoping to talk to Rachel. She's been avoiding me." "I thought you might know where she is." My heart leapt into my throat. Was he here to hurt her? To force her back into his life? I took a step back, my mind racing. "I haven't seen her," I lied, the words clumsy on my tongue. His expression shifted, the smile fading just enough to reveal the sharp edge beneath. "You're sure about that? She's been spending a lot of time here, hasn't she?" I swallowed hard, my hand tightening on the door. "Why are you looking for her?" He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Because she's mine, and she's not done with me yet." The words sent a chill down my spine. His. She wasn't his. She was her own, and she'd fought hard to break free from him. I squared my shoulders, refusing to let him intimidate me. "She's not yours. Not anymore." His eyes narrowed, the charm slipping away to reveal something darker, something dangerous. "You don't know what you're talking about. Rachel and I have a connection you could never understand." I felt a surge of anger, fierce and unrelenting. How dare he? You don't get to dictate her life. Not anymore. She's moved on. He laughed, a cold, hollow sound that made my skin crawl. Moved on? She's not capable of that. She'll always come back to me. I shook my head, refusing to let his words sink in. "You're wrong. Rachel's stronger than you think. And she's not alone." His expression hardened, and for a moment, I thought he might lunge at me. But he took a step back, his smile returning, though it lacked any warmth. "We'll see about that." He turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the doorway, my heart pounding in my chest. I closed the door, leaning against it as I tried to catch my breath. I needed to tell Rachel. She needed to know that he was looking for her, that he wasn't going to let her go without a fight. But as I reached for my phone, I hesitated. What if she isn't ready to face him? What if seeing him, or even hearing about him, sent her spiraling back into the darkness she'd just started to escape? I stared at the phone, torn between the need to protect her and the fear of making things worse. Before I could decide, the phone buzzed in my hand. It was Rachel. "Hey," I answered, my voice tight with unease. "Can you come over?" Her voice was shaky, barely above a whisper. "I need to talk to you." "Rachel, is everything okay?" She hesitated, and when she spoke again, her voice broke. "He's here." My heart stopped. "Lucas?" "Yes." I grabbed my keys and bolted out the door, my mind racing. He'd found her. How? Why now? I drove to her house in a blur, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I got there, Rachel was waiting on the porch, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her face was pale, her eyes red and swollen from crying. I ran up to her, pulling her into a hug. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice desperate. She nodded, but her body trembled against mine. "He's inside. He won't leave." I pulled back, staring at her in shock. "Inside? What happened?" She took a shaky breath, her words tumbling out in a rush. "He just showed up. He said he wanted to talk, but it's all the same. The lies, the manipulation. I told him to leave, but he won't." I felt a surge of anger. Hotter and fiercer than before. How dare he invade her space, her sanctuary? "Let me talk to him." She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "No, he's not safe. I just need to get out of here. I can't be near him." I nodded, my mind racing. "Okay, let's go. You can stay with me." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with gratitude and fear. "Thank you." We turned to leave, but before we could take a step, the door opened behind us. Lucas stood there, his arms crossed, that same cold smile on his face. "Leaving so soon?" he asked, his tone mocking. Rachel froze, her body tensing like a cornered animal. I stepped in front of her, shielding her from his gaze. "Leave her alone." His eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, the mask slipped, revealing the rage beneath. "You really think you can protect her?" I held his gaze, refusing to back down. "Yes." He laughed, a low, bitter sound. "You have no idea what she's capable of. She'll destroy you, just like she destroyed me." Rachel flinched, her breath catching in her throat. I reached back, gripping her hand tight. "You're wrong. She's nothing like you." His smile faded, replaced by a look of pure hatred. "We'll see." He stepped back, slamming the door shut. I turned to Rachel, pulling her into a tight hug. "Let's go." She nodded, her body still trembling. We walked to my car, the weight of his presence lingering like a shadow. As I started the engine, Rachel spoke, her voice barely audible. "I'm scared." I reached over, taking her hand in mine. "You're not alone. We'll get through this together." She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." I squeezed her hand, my voice steady despite the fear swirling inside me. "You are. And I'll be here every step of the way."